This video examines issues of masculinity and sexuality that have come up with regard to Justin Bieber. There is a written article that I wrote. If you're interested, in the description of the video, there's a link to it. What are some of the attacks that have been made against Justin Bieber? By the way, I find these attacks disturbing. I mean, the guy's only 16 years old, and already he's got, for example, a Facebook page that has over 300,000 members, and the name of the page is Justin Bieber should be voted out of the male gender. Another accusation similar is that he's a girl, and finally that he's gay. Now, why do people, usually guys, although some girls and women issue these attacks as well, why do they do that? I suggest there are three reasons. One is insecure masculinity on the part of boys or men who attack him. The second is homophobia. And the third is plain old jealousy. Well, what do I mean by insecure masculinity? Masculinity, at least in the United States and Canada, although this is true for other cultures as well, masculinity has a very narrow, rigid definition. What I mean by that is in order to fit the societal definition of masculinity, a boy or a man has to conform to a social norm that is very strict, specific, and inflexible. So, for example, what kind of clothes you wear is one area in which there are very strict standards on what's acceptable. For example, you don't wear a dress if you're a guy. Now, that may seem obvious, but if you're from Scotland and you wear a kilt, then that's acceptable. So there's a cultural difference, and that shows you how culture-bound definitions of masculinity are. They often have very little to do with innate characteristics of being male, and have much more to do with what society or their culture defines as being masculine. So, for example, in the case of Justin Bieber, he violates some of these strict rules about how boys or men are supposed to behave. For example, he likes to shop. He loves the color purple. He likes to wear scarves. He wears fashionable clothing. He experiments with different dance moves, and he has a high-pitched voice, although that's changing. So these are all violations of rules which say men and boys are not supposed to like bright colors. Blue is okay, purple, no. And pink is the worst. Now, of course, there are exceptions here and there to this, but still, most guys that wear a pink shirt are going to catch some negativity as a result. Fashionable clothing, you really have to be careful in how you wear fashionable clothing and what context. Otherwise, you're going to be accused of either being gay or something. Usually, that's the accusation. Dancing. If you are learning different dance moves and you do anything that smacks of being somewhat feminine, then you're going to get criticized. Having a high-pitched voice. Now, of course, boys before they reach puberty are going to have a higher-pitched voice, and pretty similar to a girl's voice. So that's not common for boys to be accused of being girlish unless they're teenagers and they have a higher pitched voice and they're making money with it. And that's the problem with Justin Bieber, is that he's becoming, he is successful because of his singing, and he has a high pitched voice, and so that doesn't fit the norm of a male, an adult male at least, supposedly having to have a deeper voice. Now that may change as he gets older, but that's the way it is now. Another aspect of masculinity which is important to keep in mind is that masculine is often defined as not feminine. A boy is not girl. A man is not woman. In other words, an analogy I give in the paper I wrote is it's as if a group of boys and girls are given balloons and told to blow them up and place them inside a large cardboard box. The only rules of the game are that the girls get a 20-second head start, and the boys cannot allow their balloons to touch the girls' balloons. Well, as a consequence of the head start, the girls' balloons are much larger, and the boys have to make their balloons small in order to not touch the girls' balloons. And in a sense, this is what happens in our culture, is that boys and men keep the definition of what is masculine very small. It's only a very small set of behaviors and ways of acting and being that are considered masculine, and anything that touches or approaches being feminine is considered bad or wrong, unmasculine. Girls can and women have a wide variety of behaviors they can engage in. A girl who's a kickboxer, a woman or a girl who's a kickboxer is considered just as feminine as one who's a ballerina, but a boy who's a in ballet often is accused of being gay or girlish and gets a lot of flack for it. So masculinity in general, a definition is that it's conformity to a social norm as opposed to innate male characteristics. Conformity to a social norm. And if you don't conform to the social norm, then your masculinity is questioned. And that's more often the case if someone has an insecure masculinity. What I mean by that is that a boy or a man who is insecure in his masculinity, who questions whether or not he's as masculine as he should be, is more likely to criticize other boys or men for being a girl or for being gay as a way to bolster up or reinforce their own sense of masculinity. It's the old habit of putting someone else down to boost oneself up. Simply another version of that. And specifically, the idea is if I'm insecure about my masculinity and I accuse someone else of being a girl, then I must be masculine, because only someone who's masculine can do that. Now let's turn to homophobia. Homophobia, and this definition came from Wikipedia. Homophobia is a range of negative attitudes and feelings towards homosexuality and people identified or perceived as being homosexual. Specifically with regard to why do people attack Justin Bieber for being gay, often I believe that it's a fear of being perceived as homosexual. And again, this is more often the case with a boy or man who's insecure about his sexuality, and they may be perfectly straight or heterosexual, but they may be afraid that they're going to be perceived as homosexual. So one of the ways to bolster up their sense of heterosexuality is to criticize someone else, call someone else gay. The thinking is that if I'm accusing someone else of being homosexual, then I must be straight, because only a straight person could do that. I'm not saying that's completely logical, but that's the thinking. That's the way it goes. So that's why I think a lot of these guys are calling Justin Bieber gay, is that they're insecure about their own sexuality. Someone who's secure in their sexuality, who's heterosexual and knows it and doesn't have any questions about it, isn't generally bothered by someone who's gay or bisexual. It's most of those kind of guys have a live and let live attitude, and they're not threatened. But someone who's insecure about their sexuality is more likely to be threatened by someone that they perceive. They may not even really think that the person's gay, but if they have some feminine characteristics traditionally defined as feminine, or could be perceived in some ways as being gay, then they'll go on that tack to try to bolster their own sense of their sexuality. The third reason I believe that people attack Justin Bieber is they're simply jealous. I mean, this is pretty obvious. Many girls, tweens, teens, and adult women adore him. And this makes a lot of boys and men jealous. They wish they were the one being adored. And so they attack. They go on the attack. It's good old envy. As simple as that drives a lot of these boys and men to attack Justin Bieber.